Into the Spider-Verse 2, Across the Spiderverse, is finally on its way, and I have some very mixed opinions about it. So let's check out the trailer. Hi everybody, my name is OliverThe Ricketts, and if you don't know me or you haven't seen my stuff before, I'm a lifelong Spider-Man fan. This is the single piece of fiction across all media that has meant the most to me in my life. If you look at Into the Spider-Verse, the original 2018 film, I believe it's one of the best outings for Spider-Man on screen of all time. In fact, here's my definitive rating of all Spider-Man movies. This is the actual order of quality, it's objective, and I'm right. Now, just to be clear about this, even the Spider-Man movies that I don't love, I still watch and enjoy often. I love the characters so much that I still get enjoyment out of the weaker entries like Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. These three on the top are pretty much interchangeable to me, and this list is more based on what day you catch me on. This is probably the order. If this is one of my favorite films about one of my favorite characters ever, why am I so nervous for the sequel? Well, that's what we call the Sony of it all.
Sony presents Sony's Spider-Man by Sony.
And I've said that before. The thing about Sony's history with Spider-Man is that they are very hit or miss with how they handle him. And they have some very constant and predictable flaws throughout their history with this character. Sony is a company that often does market research and decides what's best for their franchises based on that research. They'll try very hard to follow trends similar to when they tried to build their own Avengers with the Sinister Six in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, they've tried multiple times to build Spider-Man franchises that have worked, and there have been a lot of failures and missteps along the way. And if you look at those failures and missteps, I'm seeing a lot of those with what I'm hearing about Beyond the Spider-Verse. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a little pros and cons list of my opinions about everything swirling around about this movie, and then to cap it off, I'm going to watch the new trailer and talk about it with my wife. So let's start with expectations. There is a lot to expect from Beyond the Spider-Verse. The first movie just understood what Spider-Man was in such a refreshing way from many of the takes of Spider-Man we had been seeing at that point. Not to mention visually stunning, it's one of these movies that anybody could sit down and watch at any time. And part of that is because they were able to take a movie with a lot of characters and concepts, including multiverse, and make it very easy for you to understand, and we're able to spend enough time with each character. Now, when we look at the sequel, this is my biggest fear. The first movie has under 50 characters in the whole movie. One of the first things we heard about Across the Spiderverse is that it has over 200 characters for Sony to juggle. Now, this isn't necessarily a failure, but when you look at some of the highs that Spider-Man has had over the years, including Spider-Man 2 and The Amazing Spider-Man 1, both films that I really enjoy, they both have had sequels that failed because they were overstuffed with too many characters and too many ideas, likely mandated by the studio. However, no cause for alarm, some people would say. Of course, last year's Spider-Man No Way Home arguably existed to fill the movie with nostalgic characters and different pieces of the property from its entire cinema history. But to that I say, No Way Home is a Spider-Man movie made by Marvel Studios. And Marvel's whole thing is making movies with a lot of characters and giving all of the characters enough time to shine. They're really good at that. Sony Pictures, who is making Across the Spider-Verse, has a long history of being very bad at that. Just look at Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, when you look behind the curtain at some of the creative forces, and I'm talking about people, not studios, it is reassuring in some ways that Phil Lord and Chris Miller are still producers on this movie. We know from 22 Jump Street that they know how to handle a sequel, and they know how to make the sequel feel just as good, fresh, and original as the beloved first movie. However, we also know that sometimes Phil Lord and Chris Miller really drop the ball on sequels when we look at things like the Lego Movie 2, or as my wife calls it, Lego 2 movie. Then you look at who's directing the movie. We had 3 directors, which is not uncommon for an animated feature, but the most important one that I want to talk about is Ken Powers. Now, Ken Powers is behind a lot of movies that I really enjoy, including Pixar's Soul, which was my favorite movie of 2020, and Amazon's One Night in Miami, both of which are great movies that you should check out that really focus on the interdynamics of its characters. Something that I think was very refreshing and unique about the original Spider-Verse film. However, we've seen Sony work with great, smaller, independent directors for Spider-Man in the past. And while sometimes this yields a really unique and refreshing take on the character, other times you have situations like Mark Webb.
Really, Avi was in charge the entire time. Avi knows all.
Or even John Watts to an extent, where you get the feeling that, yes, some of their creative decisions are being taken into account by Sony when they make these movies, but sometimes they get these smaller directors so that they can tell them what to do. Let's look at some of the major directors who have almost made a Spider-Man movie, including James Cameron and David Fincher, both of whom are considered top-tier prestige directors who make major films. Sony's not coming in and telling those guys what to do, and I think because of that, they don't want them for Spider-Man. But when you grab somebody like Sam Raimi or Mark Webb or Ken Powers now to direct a Spider-Man movie, you get a lot of good word of mouth because these guys have great films under their belt, but they don't have prestige films before they do Spider-Man. Now with Spider-Man being their biggest project, Sony can tell them what to do, and I really hope that that's not why they switched directors for Beyond the Spider-Verse. Next, we touched on characters who are going to appear in this movie, but I do want to circle back to that. Some of the news we've heard about this movie is really exciting, including that one of the main villains of the film is going to be the Spot.
Call me the Spot.
One of my all-time favorite Spider-Man characters who I never thought we would see in a Spider-Man movie because quite frankly, he's a little too niche and a little too weird. But that's perfect for a movie that's similar in tone to the original Into the Spider-Verse. I'm also really excited for the return of our main three Spider people from the first movie. Miles proved to be a really great Spider-Man by the end of the film, and I've always loved Jake Johnson's take on Peter B. Parker, as he is the only Spider-Man to ever call me on the phone.
This is Peter B. Parker from Spider-Verse. I heard you had to cancel your birthday party because of Corona, so I thought I'd send you a personal message.
Now we do have confirmation that Shameik Moore, Jake Johnson, and Haley Steinfeld will all be reprising their roles, and I hope that that's in a major way. I don't want to see these characters that I know for being the lead of this series be sidelined by new characters that Sony is going to bring in. Because they started by telling us things like Insomniac's Spider-Man is going to be in this movie, or my personal favorite, Japanese Spider-Man, Spider-Man, the only Spider-Man that shoots missiles at people is going to be in this film. And that's all really exciting. But then this movie got delayed. And during that delay, we had big movies like Spider-Man No Way Home come out, as well as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, however you feel about those movies, they were box office giants. And don't forget that since the first movie, we've also had Avengers Endgame. Now, all of these big superhero movies have focused really heavily on bringing in any and all characters you can think of and seeing how the sandbox mixes and how cool the crossover is. But in all three of these instances, in my opinion, these things were secondary. The story always came first, and these appearances were used to elevate elements of the story and make it more impactful. I'm not saying that that's not what's going to happen with Across the Spider-Verse. There are reports saying that Sony is trying to bring in every iteration of the character that they can possibly think of, and that's why this is taking place over 2 movies. And while I think that that's ambitious, I've seen Sony mess up doing this exact thing before. Now, of course, I'm not saying that there isn't novelty to a bunch of Spider-Men showing up and that isn't exciting to me. I want to see the 90s cartoon Spider-Man. I want to see Spectacular Spider-Man show up. I'd even love it if Nicholas Hammond got to say a couple lines in this movie. However, that's a different sort of thing than what the original Into the Spider-Verse was. It never got distracted from the story, and it never felt like it was too much that all of the Spider-Men couldn't have their moment. And I'm just really hoping that Ken Powers and the creative team behind this movie are keeping in mind why the first one was a success in the first place. Now, all of this being said, this is my most anticipated movie of next year, so please don't take this as me being overly negative. I just wanted to get out all of these thoughts before I look at the new trailer and get swayed. Now, for this next segment, my wife is going to come and join me. We are going to watch the new trailer trailer live with you and react to it. And then we're gonna have a little discussion about where my expectations are lying after that.
Hello.
Tell me a little bit about your expectations, your opinions on the first movie.
I really enjoyed the first movie. I didn't think that I was gonna like it. I feel like the storyline is kind of basic. I get where they're going with it. I can at least see the merit in making it like Miles and his dad. I feel like I'm gonna watch the movie and be like, yeah, that was pretty predictable. But I was blown away. I really was. The animation style is just fantastic. It was one of my favorite movies that came out that year. We've watched it so many times since. I didn't really know anything about Miles Morales, but I was able to understand.
And that's the biggest thing that I'm worried about, is that first movie is so accessible. Despite talking about the multiverse, you could go into it and know nothing about Spider-Man, and you would still have a great time.
And I know plenty of people who saw the movie who really aren't huge Spider-Man fans, and they love the movie too. There's just something about it that's really appealing.
Please don't mess that up by stuffing this thing.
Yeah. I'm feeling like I'm chalking it up to, although they say there's going to be over 200 characters, I don't think there's going to be 200 speaking roles.
I don't think there will either.
There's...
But when you look at how the last movie had 50 character models, and this one has 250, there's still gonna be a big increase.
I'm really just trying to hold on to hope that it's not that bad and they do it in a way that makes sense.
Just make sure that they all have, if you're gonna put them in, make sure they have time. All right, let's, fingers crossed, and I hope my favorite Spider-Man has time to shine in this thing.
Who's your favorite Spider-Man?
Jake Johnson.
Oh, Peter B.
My favorite Spider-Man in this context.
Okay.
Of course, Tobey's my favorite.
Maybe you should have cleaned off the computer screen.
No one my age says those words.
I wonder if Jefferson Davis dies in this movie.
Okay, this is...
Okay, so some old stuff. Old shot.
I love you.
Wherever you go from here, you have to
Rainbow
promise
Road.
to take people.
That's a lot. There he
Doubts
is.
that he's loved.
Oh.
Bagman's cool. You know,
That's a little underwhelming.
I tried to get all the negative thoughts out first. That didn't do it for me at all.
Underwhelming.
Wow, and people have been talking so much about how excited they are by this trailer. It's exactly what I was just talking about. And now I don't think that this is what the movie's going to be necessarily, or even that this is an indication. We're still early. It's still not coming out till next summer. Mm-hmm. They did just show us only a camera pulling out on a lot of Spider-Man. I'm not feeling
Half
it.
of this trailer was cutbacks to the first movie. I don't really know if I would consider this to be like I know it's an official trailer. Obviously they released it, it's an official trailer. I don't know if I would really consider this to be a trailer for the movie as much as it is a bridge between the last movie and this movie.
Like a little reminder, like, here's the movie.
Remember, you like Spider-Man. So all of these Spider-Men, and it's like, okay, you're throwing this in here so that we can freeze it. There's that Spider-Man, there's that Spider-Man, and then that one from this one, and that one from that one. It's like, but it's not really doing anything. Yeah.
I need to see some scenes with multiple Spider-Men interacting. My big highlight, though, Peter B. Parker. There's a pretty big revelation about him in here. Did you catch it?
No. I saw he had a coat on.
He had a robe. My man.
He has a baby!
He has a baby!
He has a baby!
So the last time that we saw him, it was, do I want kids? And then he goes and he meets back up with MJ, and they made it work. I hope just to see more from the characters that I love, and I hope to have a couple new characters to love as well, without it being a total cameo fest. So I'm going to give this trailer a C+, but it's still my most anticipated movie of the year.
I'll give it a C, just because I expected more. I don't like it when trailers spend half of their time showing you a movie you've already seen. I'm excited for it, but this is very average.
And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Stick with us. I'm going to be following at least any and all Spider-Man stuff. I also do my documentary series, OliverThe Ricketts American Genius, where I talk about pop culture curiosities as well as different kinds of food. Folks, I'm trying to do everything. The best way for you to support is to hit the subscribe button and like this video. That's what makes it possible for me to do what I do. It's much appreciated. Hey, thanks everybody.
Thanks.
This is Peter B. Parker from Spiderverse. I heard you had to cancel your birthday party because of Corona, so I thought I'd send you a personal message. and say this. Happy birthday to you. Sorry, my voice is terrible. Happy birthday to you. I'm sorry, I really have a bad voice. Hopefully you can sing better over this. Happy
Oh, sorry.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. I'm sorry you canceled the party, but it's still a pretty special day. Happy birthday to you.
Oliver can't sing over it better.